So it's kind of busy around here. I got to leave in about 20 minutes. This is where we're going to spend about 14 hours tomorrow writing the budget for the country. And it's a big time because our budget is in serious trouble. The future that you have right now is in doubt. It is in question. I don't mean to be dour with you about that, but politicians from both political parties for many decades have been making a lot of empty promises to people in this country and about what government can do for them. And those empty promises are about to be broken promises. We borrow 40 cents on every dollar our government spends. And if we keep doing that, we're going to have what we call a debt crisis. And that means we'll have a real ugly shock to our economy like we had in 2008. And then government's going to have to do what we call austerity. Painful, immediate cuts to people who depend on government programs where they'll have no time to prepare. Taxes that will go up and hurt job creation and hurt younger people from coming out and having careers. What the government economic forecasters tell us is that for the first time in this country's history, they believe without a shred of doubt that the standard of living for Americans in the future is lower, and we've never had that before. I went to Craig, grew up, half a mile from Craig. I still live in the block I grew up on. My folks always told me, the whole point of this country is you leave the next generation better off. If we don't fix this problem, we're not going to be able to do that anymore. So this is a big moment for America right now, and it drives through the decisions we make on government spending, government taxing, how we try to grow our economy, and make good on the promises that the government's made to people. And it's not an insidious thing where we are. It's just the fact that most of our programs are age-based. They're demographically based. We're going from 40 million seniors to 80 million seniors now that the baby boomers are starting to retire. 10,000 people every day in America are retiring. And because current workers pay taxes for current seniors, we got a 100% increase in the beneficiaries, but only a 17% increase in the workers coming into these programs. And so that's what's going on, and we got to do something about it, and that's what we're going to do here tomorrow. So let me take a few of your questions. Usually I get to go through all of them, but I apologize. It's insanely busy right now, so yeah. Say who you are and where you're from.
Elizabeth Hayes-Camp.
Oh, are you Jeff's daughter? Yes. All right. I'm your neighbor then.
I know. I'm on the tax team, and I was wondering, how do you expect your budget plan to be received?
Well, I don't think the Democrats are going to like it too much. I don't mean that in a partisan way, but the president gave us a budget we just don't agree with. If you just did nothing, just status quo, our debt goes up 78%. If you pass the president's budget, the debt goes up 76%. And it's after a lot of spending and taxing, which I think will make the debt worse, obviously, but hurt the economy. So we just have a different opinion. And the way I look at things, it's not enough to just complain about the other party or if somebody's doing something you don't agree with. We don't agree with the direction the country's going. We owe it to you, our constituents, to say, here's how I would do things differently. Here are my ideas on how to solve these problems, and I'm going to put those ideas up. The frustrating point of this is we have a law that says you have to put a budget out every year. Congress needs to budget by April 15th. It's tax day for everybody else. In Congress, it's budget day. The Senate has now decided for the third year in a row just not to pass a budget. So we're running on autopilot with no accountability and no budgeting, and that's what's very frustrating. So we're going to pass a budget, but I don't think it's going to be well received in the sense that the Senate has already said now, like they said in 2010 and 2011, they're not going to do a budget. And the way the law works here is House passes a budget, Senate passes a budget, you reconcile the differences, then you move forward to implement it. But if one of those things stops, like the Senate not passing a budget, then the whole system just disintegrates and comes to a halt. And so that means we just stay on the status quo. And the status quo brings us to a debt crisis, which we're trying to avoid. That's why it's very frustrating. Yeah.
My question was...
Wait, no, who are you? Where are you from?
Yeah. My name's Maddie Tyson. I'm from Parker.
Okay.
And my question is, what are your opinions on the president's tax plan?
The president has a $2 trillion tax increase in his budget. What worries me about it, most of all, is how it hits small businesses. It takes the effective top individual tax rate and brings it to 44.8%. Now, here's the deal. In Wisconsin, 9 out of 10 of our businesses, 90% of Wisconsin businesses, they're not what we call corporations. They file their taxes as individuals, as partnerships, sub-S corporations. Go out to the industrial parks in our towns, and 90% of those businesses, that have 50, 500, employees, aren't paying taxes as corporations, but as individuals. And so we're bringing their tax rate up to 45%. That will really hurt job creation. Canada, our big competitor to the north, just lowered their taxes this year on their businesses to 15%. China's at 25, Ireland's at 12.5, England's going down to 23, and we're going to bring it up to 45. That hurts our businesses, and it makes it impossible for them to compete. And we're big manufacturers in Wisconsin. No state has more jobs in manufacturing per person than Wisconsin does. And manufacturers are in global competition. Manufacturers are competing with Germans and Canadians and the Chinese and the Indians. And when we're taxing our manufacturers at such higher rates than our competitors are taxing theirs, we lose, they win. And we want to make sure we have better tax reform. The point I would say is you can do both. You can have the revenues you need and lower tax rates. And what we say is get rid of the tax shelters. Get rid of all the special interest loopholes in the tax shelters, which are mostly used by the people in the top 2 tax brackets. And by getting rid of those tax shelters, more of their income subject to taxation, albeit at lower rates for everybody. So for a person in the top tax rate, they use almost all the tax shelters. So if you park your money in a tax shelter, it's taxed at 0. If you take away the tax shelter, lower everybody's tax rates, have better internationally competitive tax rates on people and families and businesses, then more of their money is subject to taxation. So they'll actually have more of their income paying taxes than they were before with all these tax shelters. But by getting rid of these tax shelters, we get more revenue in, and we can lower everybody's tax rates and have a better tax system that helps us create jobs and growth. That, to me, is the secret to success. And there are a lot of Democrats up here who agree with us. So we think that there's a growing bipartisan consensus on how to reform the tax system. The problem is the president just disagrees with that consensus. And he's proposing higher tax rates and more loopholes, which will, I think, just do damage to our economy. Yeah.
I'm Adam Reeder, and I attend Craig High School. My topic is concerning the defense spending. What are your thoughts concerning the automatic cuts facing the Department of Defense?
So in about 20 minutes, I'll be walking my conference through how we propose to deal with this. And in about an hour and 20 minutes, I'll be doing a press conference showing exactly how we do this. So I'll give you a scoop, right? This is taped for later, right? Yeah, so starting in January, the defense gets cut $55 billion across the board, and then every year thereafter by that amount. The sequester, defense constitutes 20% of our budget, but they take 50% of the cuts. And what the military tells us is you'll go beyond hollowing out the military. You'll go to the point where you're giving our men and women who are asking to do incredible things, we will be shortchanging them, shortchanging their equipment, making them less safe. And so what we're saying is this is a government agency that definitely has some wastes and inefficiencies, so we need to get some savings out of them. But the president's budget goes far below that, and then the sequester takes it even more below that to hollow out our military, which is the first priority of our federal government. It's constitutional. It's right there in the Constitution. So we're saying keep the spending where it is for this year, because we are in a war right now, and then have what we call real growth. So we can keep with inflation, reprioritize savings. Now that saves us about $300 billion in our budget off of the current, what we call defense baseline. The president goes much deeper than that, and we think compromises the quality of our military and compromises the mission. It's a more dangerous world than it was before. The Navy is shrinking dramatically. What we call end strength troops, that's shrinking dramatically under the president's budget. And my fear is you're just going to have more guards and reserves being continually called up. Look, Andy Speth, who you know, Andy, you're St. Paul's family, right? And he's been called up 3 times. He's my coworker. I mean, how many people do you know in the Guard and Reserves have been called up and called up? If you keep knocking down end strength of your active duty military, then you're putting such a huge burden on your Guard and Reserves in the kinds of war on terror that we're fighting. And so I really worry that we're hollowing out our military. So we're going to propose how we would replace the sequester. We're going to actually make Congress do its job, which was the whole purpose of the super committee, was show how we actually will cut spending in other areas to avoid this sort of indiscriminate sequester from taking place. And so we're going to map that out and lay it out basically in about an hour. Replace the sequester, don't turn it off is the way we just say it. I have time for one more, I guess. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nate Masterson. I go to Parker, and I'm with the Medicare team.
You related to Ryan?
Ryan Masterson? Yes.
Yeah. How?
He's my cousin.
Oh, cool. He teaches at Craig, but coaches at Parker, right? Yeah. He's a buddy of mine. I grew up with him, so I'm kind of mixed when I go to these games. You know, I'm like, geez, what do I, you know? Yeah, right.
Well, my question is, what would you say to senior citizens who feel that their Medicare coverage is being taken away because of your plan?
Actually, it's quite the opposite. Their Medicare coverage is being compromised because of President Obama's law. Let's not forget the fact that President Obama's law puts a cap on Medicare and then puts this new board that starts getting assembled this year of 15 unelected people to put price controls on Medicare, which leads to denied care for current seniors. So this new board that the president's law does hurts current seniors by lowering prices to providers, which denies care to them. The president's law also takes $500 billion from Medicare to spend on his new health care law. So it raids it, it rations it, and it still goes bankrupt. The problem is Medicare has a $37 trillion unfunded liability, meaning it's moving toward bankruptcy very quickly. So what we're saying is we need to reform this program to save the program. And the way we propose to do it is don't change the benefits for people in or near retirement. Get rid of this board, stop rating the program, and keep the Medicare benefit as it is today for current seniors. So what we're saying is don't change the benefit for current seniors because they already retired and they organize their lives around it. And keep it for people who are about to retire. But if we want to do that, if we want to cash flow that promise, keep that commitment, you simply must reform it for the younger generation because it's going to be bankrupt for us anyway when we retire. And the way we propose to reform it is to have it work like a system like the one we have in Congress and federal employees, where you have a list of guaranteed coverage options from Medicare, including what we propose, a traditional Medicare option. You select among those competing plans that Medicare pre-selects for your benefit, just like people do in the federal workforce, like members of Congress do, just like people do for their Medicare drug benefit. And then Medicare subsidizes your premium. And it says if you're a low-income person or sick, you get much more of a subsidy. If you're a wealthy person, you get a much lower subsidy. Doing it this way saves and strengthens Medicare. It makes it so that we can keep the commitment to people in and near retirement with the system they already have and organize their lives around, but gives us a system that's sustainable so that we actually have something when we retire. And I would simply argue that there's a growing bipartisan consensus that this is the best way to save Medicare. This was a consensus that was reached in the 1990s. They called it the Bro-Frist Commission, the Clinton Commission to Save Medicare. Rivlin Domenici, which is a Republican Democrat, have recently proposed it. Ron Wyden and myself, a Democrat from Oregon, have proposed this is the best way to save Medicare. So what we're saying is we think there's a better bipartisan way to save and strengthen Medicare. It's opposite of the president's health care law, and we're going to reflect it in our budget because of all the programs that is making the biggest empty promises to current Americans, that is the biggest driver of our debt, and therefore the big instigator of our debt crisis, it's this program. You got to get this program fixed and solved, or else it's going to be a lot of people are going to be lied to and have empty promises, and we're going to have a debt crisis. So in order to guarantee the health security of current seniors, of future seniors, and the economic security of all Americans, you need to deal with this issue. And I would simply say that the president's law doesn't. It does it in a very bad way. It goes in the wrong direction, and we think this is a far better, smarter way to go. So, let's see. How about one more? I'm supposed to leave it, right? Okay. Eric, you're the popular guy, I guess. Okay. So.
Yeah. I go with Parker. My topic is the national debt.
What's your last name?
Heiss.
Heiss.
And I was wondering, how long do you think it would take us to get out of the debt down to a reasonable level, and how would you suggest that?
So, I don't know if it's on the web yet, but later, in about an hour and a half, our plan will be on the web. So go to budget.house.gov, download it. It's about a 90-page budget, so I can't summarize the 90 pages in a couple of minutes. The key is get your spending under control, get your borrowing under control, and grow your economy. More people going to work means less people collecting unemployment, working, paying taxes, revenues coming to the government, and get spending under control. What we show is how we get our debt stabilized and start moving it down right away. Our debt is getting toward the real danger area where it at least starts compromising your economy. We get the debt down and then we get it ultimately paid off over the next few decades. The president's plan raises the debt. It goes up about 10 percentage points of GDP, which gets real dangerous, and then it literally just takes off after that. So what we'll show you if you download our plan is we show a way of getting the debt under control so it doesn't threaten our economy, and then paid off. If our economy grows faster as a result of the policies that we think that we're proposing, which we think will grow the economy faster, then the debt gets paid off even faster than that. So what we will show you is today how we have a plan that CBO measures gets the debt under control and paid off. What we'll show later is if we get more people going to work, and if we put in place pro-growth economic policies like the tax reforms I'm talking about, you balance the budget much faster and get the debt paid off even faster. The key is get this debt under control fast, because once it starts leaving us, we think we got about 2 years before we have a debt crisis. That's what all the experts tell us. When I first started writing these budgets, they told me 10 years. Then the recession came, then they told us 5 years. Now all the experts we bring in here in the committee say you got about 2 years before you're Europe, before you have a European situation on our hands. And that gets really painful and really ugly. It will make 2008 look like a walk in the park. And so we believe we have a moral obligation to try and stop that from happening. This is the most predictable crisis we've ever had in this country, and we know that if we stay in the path, it's going to happen. So we feel we have an obligation not to duck responsibility like the Senate, but to actually put out a plan and show how we're going to prevent this crisis from hitting us, which the people who get hit the first and the worst are the poor and the sick, the people who rely on government so much, and that is unconscionable in my mind. You've got to get this debt under control so we can keep these promises and grow the economy. And so that's basically what we got to do.
One real quick comment, Congressman Ryan. We've told our students that things are bad, but this country always has dealt with bad problems. And we talked about the Civil War in our history classes, the Great Depression, World War II, all of the challenges. I've had some people suggest that we might be heading to a challenge equal to some of those in the past that we've studied. What are your thoughts?
This is enormous. I don't think people quite understand the enormity of this situation we're in the crisis we have. The next couple of years, the decisions we make will clearly determine the kind of country and the kind of people we're going to be for the next century, for the 21st century. We're in the midst of picking a trajectory for our nation. And the trajectory, if we stay in the status quo, is more debt, more decline, more doubt, lower living standards. If we get this thing under control, because we still have a window of opportunity to do it, we can get back to growth, we can get back to prosperity, we can get back to having a growing economy that when you come out of school, you have an economy to go into where you can make the most of your life, you can reach your future. We believe in a system of upward mobility with a safety net to help people get back on their feet. All that is compromised if we don't get this thing under control. And so this is a very, very big moment for our country. And we just feel we have a moral obligation to you, the people we represent, to try and stop a really bad thing from about to happen. And we see this one coming. Most of these things we don't see coming, this one we do. And it is really trajectory making for America. And I just can't underscore it more than that. But I got to go on with my day. It's a busy one. So thanks, everybody. Thank you.